Hello and welcome. I'm Steve Clemons, editor-at-large of The Hill. Thanks for joining us today for our virtual event called Rebuilding the Federal Workforce. The federal workforce is experiencing a loss of senior talent and subject matter experts. And according to the Office of Management and Budget and the Office of Personnel Management, of the 2.1 million current federal civilian employees, more than one-third are eligible for retirement in the next 5 years. That means we're going to lose a lot of them. And only 6% are under the age of 30. That means we need to push refresh. So with the new administration on its way, how can the government restore and retain expertise to ensure efficiency and to take on the challenges of governing? And how do we shape a new era of public service and make government an attractive career option? Before we begin, I want to thank our sponsor, Nokia, for raising this issue and making today's conversations possible. Today, members of Congress and an impressive lineup of former officials will discuss how the new administration can build consensus to re-equip agencies with funds, resources, and staff. Before we get underway, a few housekeeping notes. You can tweet us at The Hill Events, all one thing, The Hill Events. And you can use the hashtag TheHillGov, The Hill G-O-V. We're broadcasting live, and we'll be taking your questions throughout the program. Send them in. We'll use them. And if you experience any trouble with the live stream, I laugh here. They say refresh, and it will solve all your problems. Never does for me, but I am sure it will for you. Now, we are going to have some fun. Earlier in 2020, our first guest wrote an open letter to Democratic presidential candidates asking them to consider how they would work to restore faith in the civil service. She's also a co-sponsor of the Federal Worker Leave Fairness Act. I should also say that President-elect Biden wrote back to her today and gave her an answer, which I hope we'll talk about. Congresswoman Jennifer Wexton of Virginia, so great to see you. Thank you for joining us. So what did Joe Biden tell you?
Well, he told me that as part of his quest to restore the soul of America was to restore dignity to public service and to the federal workforce. And he has a plan to do just that. So, it was instrumental in my decision to endorse him in the primary.
Look, I think that one of the things, Jennifer, one of the reasons why we're looking at this is to look at the state of the federal workforce. Are we doing the things that we should by them? And you've enacted and you've sponsored a number of items of legislation that I'm surprised we needed. Allowing, those that were sidelined by coronavirus duties or sidelined, for frontline worker responsibilities, and they're working full-time, vastly more than full-time of, simple things like letting their leave roll over so they could do it again. I guess I was shocked to know that anyone would need to do that. You did step forward. What's the state of play right now as you see it in terms of standing by those workers who have sacrificed so much during the COVID period?
Well, it's so important. And they don't just sacrifice during the COVID period. I mean, federal workers generally take a lower salary because they believe in the missions of the agencies that they're working for. So, but during COVID, it's been very clear that they have stepped up and made the federal government function better. It's because of them that we had, hungry kids being fed through the USDA. It's because of them that people got their economic impact checks and their stimulus checks and things like that. So it's absolutely necessary that these are people who aren't able to take their leave. So they should roll over. So they shouldn't be penalized on top of stepping up and doing all this extra work during the pandemic. So, it's also a matter of the fact that, we've been playing defense for the last 4 years. The Trump administration has been very hostile towards federal workers. And we found another issue that I've had to deal with a lot is inconsistencies in telework regulations and rules among the various agencies and trying to maximize telework for federal workers.
Representative Wexton, one of the things I've been trying to get my head around on where we are, and I'm trying to sort of not think in any way about which party anyone belongs to, but on the broad question of workers for government in the deep government who've worked for decades in some cases at NOAA, in the health agencies, there's Tony Fauci up at the top of, the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease, but there are a lot of people beneath them that have been giving their lives. And it seems to me that we've gone through a period of time where one's politics or a political filter has been highly influential on who stays and who goes in those. And a lot of people have been moved out of those positions. I'm just wondering, how do you restore expertise and how do you restore these people back to government without falling into the other trap that they need to follow a filter of the Democratic Party right now? I mean, or do we just accept that politics, North Star, South Star, are going to become the drivers of expertise in government whenever we have a change in administration?
We should never, ever accept that, because a nonpartisan civil service is what keeps our country functioning and running smoothly. So one of the things that I hope is that a lot of people who have felt that they had to leave government service over the past several years will feel that it's safe to come back, and that they will be respected and treated with dignity and allowed to perform their functions irrespective of political affiliation. So, I think that that's one of the things we can do, but we're going to need to restart and rebuild from the beginning and start to attract more young people back into federal service. I'm glad that we were able to, pass paid parental leave for federal workers for the first time ever in 2019. I think that will help further attract a new generation, but we need to also treat them with dignity and respect and restore the goal of working for public service for a new generation of American workers.
Look, I know that politics is not a kumbaya sport. It can be a rough sport, but I'm intrigued that when you were in the Virginia legislature and you were in the political minority, you got 40 bills passed. I mean, it's one of the things that's really well known about you. And part of that, I assume, is understanding the other side, listening to them, bringing them around. And I'm just wondering, your colleagues know how good you are with dealing with Republicans, and are you teaching them anything?
Well, we all need to respect each other, and we need to remember that we're all working toward the same goal, and just trying to find where we can find issues where we can find consensus. And that's something that historically I've been able to do, and I've been successful with here on the Hill. The NDAA is a great example of a way that we find bipartisan consensus. It's always something that passes with broad bipartisan votes and does a lot of good work for the American people.
When you got the letter back from Joe Biden today, and I have a copy of the letter, I'd read it, if I could, but it's really, really small print. What I got off your Twitter flow, it seemed to me, it's a 2-page letter. It's a very, very full. It's not like, yes, Representative Wexton, we hear you. It was a very detailed letter about what needs to be done by standing for the federal workforce. And I'm wondering, whether you're satisfied with that, because, I found it pretty encompassing. But are there pieces, are there blind spots that an incoming administration might have, not purposely, but might have, that it doesn't understand about the workers you've been trying to stand by? Well,
I feel pretty confident that Joe Biden and the Biden administration gets it. He's been in federal service for so long that he understands the important work of the nonpartisan civil service. And he also seems to have a plan to rebuild by recruiting from colleges and HBCUs in order to create a more diverse workforce at the federal level. So I feel pretty confident that he gets it and that he'll do a nice job. But again, there's going to be a lot of rebuilding that has to take place because of the brain drain that we experienced during the Trump administration and overt attacks on so many agencies.
We're taking questions in the audience, and I have one here, Representative Wexton, from Marianne D'Alessandro, who's the director, and I'm going to get this wrong, of the NIOSH, so that's probably some National Institute of something cool, of NPPTL. As a federal employee with 30 years of experience, how can I best support the next generation in my last 5 or so years as a federal leader? I find this a very good question, because when we opened this question, we were talking about the fact that there is a deficit of people under 30 working in federal government now, that there are a lot of people that are going to retire, just like Marianne D'Alessandro most likely will. And I'd just be interested in this intergenerational connection and whether you have any insights into what folks like Mary can do to help bridge that and to help bring people in.
I think that working to mentor people who are already there at her agency is an important thing to do, to bring up the next generation of leadership within that agency, but also getting out and getting more involved in the community and helping to recruit on that score. And also, one of the things that I do in my office is I have a high school leadership program where I expose high school kids to various leaders in the government in different agencies and show them all the cool things that they can do. I also have a STEM event with people like NASA Administrator Clayton from NASA Langley, where I mean the kids were so inspired to hear from him about all the great things that they can do at NASA. So there's a lot that she can do both within her agency and also outside, attracting the next generation to come and serve in the federal government.
Now, I don't know if you read Michael Lewis's book, The Fifth Risk. I recommend it to some, but not to people who want to sleep because there's so many scary scenarios in it. But in it, he basically says, when the Trump administration was coming in and without politics, the thing that people worried about was project management, just running things. And he looked at a broad swath of government. We have Eileen Harrington, who will be joining us here, and she is the person that created the what do you call it, the no spam call registry, and did other kinds of things that came in together. But it was basically project management. We saw the administration essentially have some trouble managing, if that's probably an understatement, the COVID crisis and responding to the COVID crisis. So I guess my question to you, on the broad side of expertise in government, bringing it back so that systems can run, what are your insights into, you represent Virginia, into how the administration could have done a better job responding and managing the front end of this COVID crisis?
Well, that's why the transition is so important. And that's why, you have to have a seamless transition from one administration to the next. And you need to have a cooperative handoff because there is so much ongoing. And that's one of the issues that we're experiencing. When you have acting directors and people in acting capacities who are installed, just a couple of weeks before the transition begins, it's not a recipe for success. And that's one of the issues that we saw when the Trump administration came in, that they didn't have much interest in the transition and in learning about what it actually took to govern. So that was a real problem, and it's hamstrung them in terms of their ability to govern effectively.
I will say to you, do you have, you wrote an op-ed last February that kind of looked at this broad question of expertise in government, competence in policy. If you were to kind of do a Jennifer Wexton op-ed 2.0, what would be the elements that you think are important to hammer on now?
That we need to maintain expertise in government, that we need to respect science and we need to respect facts and data. And that's how we're going to be able to turn the corner on things like COVID and make our country stronger and more successful in the future.
Well, Jennifer Wexton from Virginia, I want to thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing what bills you introduced in the new Congress in the House of Representatives. Thanks for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.